I'm Quentin, and today I'm going to be talking about a few of the people running as Republicans this election cycle. This is the sequel to my prior piece about everyone running as a Democrat. Originally, the plan was to talk about everyone running as a Republican, but there's honestly far too many people, and I don't have the time to talk about everyone. So I'm just going to be talking about 3 people: Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and Vivek Ramaswamy. I believe that Nikki Haley is doing better in the polls than Ramaswamy, but I didn't have as much to say about her, so that's why I chose to do Ramaswamy. Okay, so first, we'll start out with Trump. Trump is quite the controversial fellow, as I'm sure you know. I'm not the biggest fan of him for many reasons, which I'll get into soon. First off, one thing that I find really dumb is how MAGA Republicans and Trump supporters often hate on Biden because they claim he's too old, but it's not like Trump is much better because he's 77 years old. One thing that I will give Trump is his quick wit and charisma. He's been indicted multiple times the past couple of months, which has birthed this incredible image. I remember when this image came out, we were all at lunch, we were all sitting around the table watching the news, waiting for it to come out. He's in violent opposition to undocumented immigrants. He was even quoted saying immigrants were, quote, poisoning the blood of our country, which is essentially just Nazi rhetoric. If Trump gets elected, he wants to obliterate the deep state, which essentially just means he's going to fire every Democrat working in the government. While I am by no means a fan of bureaucracy in the government and don't like politicians in general, I don't like this. Another thing that he wants to do is get rid of government employees who have leaked information to reporters. This is really ironic to me because it's essentially withholding information from the public, which in his words makes a deep state. Trump plans to instill a civil service exam for anyone who wants to work in the government. He plans to continue building the border wall that Biden had started. He will not only target undocumented immigrants, but also legal immigrants who have sympathy towards undocumented immigrants. He plans on getting rid of automatic citizenship for those born in the country if the child is born to undocumented parents, which is actually one of the craziest things I've ever heard, because almost every developed nation has this as a right. It would be really crazy to get rid of this. He plans on reinstating the Muslim travel ban to keep, in his words, radical Islamic terrorists out of the country. He is going to increase tariffs on international trade. He claims he's going to end the conflict in Ukraine before he's even inaugurated, and he's going to get European states to reimburse America for all the, quote, treasures we've sent them. He also says he's going to pass a bill where there will only be 2 genders and they're determined at birth. Gotta love government overreach. He's also going to make it so hospitals cannot give people hormones or gender change surgeries. He says he's going to ramp up oil drilling under the slogan, drill baby drill. He pledges to get rid of the Board of Education and will cut funding for schools that have mask or vaccine mandates. He also encourages prayer in school. So much for the separation of church and state. He's also going to allow teachers to conceal carry. He says he's going to teach kids to, quote, love their country instead of hate it like is being taught now. Finally, he wants to build large tent cities for homeless people, and if they're caught sleeping in urban streets, they will be given the choice of going to prison or being treated in mental hospitals, which he wants to reestablish. Should you vote for Trump? Honestly, it's a clear no. I think we saw what happened when he was president and how America just got more and more divided, which is obviously not a good thing. In my opinion, no, don't vote for Trump. Next up, we have Ron DeSantis. DeSantis served in the House of Representatives between 2013 and has been the governor of Florida since 2019. I really hate DeSantis. He markets himself as a warrior against wokeness. One thing that he's most famous for is the infamous Parents' Rights in Education bill, also known as the Don't Say Gay bill. Essentially what it does is make it so that topics of sexual orientation or gender identity cannot be discussed at schools if it is deemed inappropriate. One of the blaring issues with this bill is the huge gray area. Nowhere does it specify when these discussions are appropriate. This is really bad for LGBTQ+ students and teens because it limits their access to information as well as potentially life-saving care. He plans on strengthening the border. He's in opposition to Medicare and all gun control. DeSantis poses himself as a warrior for American freedoms, but many of the things he has done and said during his career as governor have been in direct opposition to that claim. For example, at the height of the Black Lives Matter protests, DeSantis basically made even the most peaceful protests a crime, which is in direct opposition to the First Amendment. DeSantis plans on enacting a federal 15-week abortion ban, which basically you won't be able to have an abortion after 15 weeks. Earlier in his campaign, DeSantis was doing much better, but as of late, his numbers have fallen drastically. This is for many reasons. Some of these include the fact that he's much more of a traditional conservative than someone like Trump, and how he's not nearly as charismatic. Another reason is the whole shoe fiasco, where he was caught wearing boots, but there was nothing in the toe toe box because he was very obviously wearing like lifts. Even though it's silly, I think it shows how we genuinely have no reason to trust politicians because they'll lie to you about the smallest things like their height. For a while, I was actually really scared that DeSantis was going to win because of the, in my opinion, terrible acts and laws he planned on doing. However, I'm not too worried about it anymore because there's honestly no way he's going to win. Finally, I would like to talk about this ad that he did where it showed some people marching at a DeSantis rally holding a flag with a black sun symbol. For those who don't know, the black sun symbol is a logo that dates back to Nazi Germany, commonly used by neo-Nazis who believe in witchcraft. The ad was quickly taken off after this was noticed, but it's just really crazy, man. I don't know, tells you something about who's going to vote for DeSantis, I guess. So, you know, I almost feel like I don't need to say it, but you should not be voting for DeSantis if you have any moral compass. Finally, we've got Vivek Ramaswamy. Prior to running for president, Ramaswamy founded a pharmaceutical company called Raviant Sciences. Ramaswamy is Hindu, but has been trying to appeal to the conservative Christian and Christian nationalist voter base. He criticizes modern America, saying that America is based on Judeo-Christian values and should continue to function under those Christian values in question. So much for the separation of church and state. He says abortion is murder and needs to be outlawed. However, he says there should be an exception for rape and incest, which is more than can be said for a lot of Republicans. He's in opposition to affirmative action and says it's institutionalized racism. While I may understand people being in opposition to affirmative action, I don't think it's the major issue for college. I think legacy admissions is a larger issue because people whose parents went to Harvard will essentially automatically get into Harvard whether they were a good student or not. Many people try to claim that affirmative action gives black students access to colleges that they're not deserving of, like maybe a student with a C got into Harvard, but that's never the case. When you think of how many students were valedictorian of their class, got straight A's, or 1400 on their SAT, don't get into Harvard, it's obviously a lot of people, and affirmative action just gives a priority to African American students. He wrote a book called Woke Inc. and describes himself as anti-woke. He does the classic conservative thing where they say the left's pro-LGBTQ or climate change activism is the new secularism. He makes the argument without seeing the blaring issue with it that him and many other conservatives do the same thing with being anti-woke. He supports federally legalizing marijuana. He also supports legalizing ketamine and ashwagandha for veterans suffering from PTSD. Like Trump, Ramaswamy vows to lay off a lot of the government employees, and he plans on getting rid of things like the Department of Education or the CDC. He supports a 59% tax on inheritance because he says people who get large inheritance from their parents will essentially just create an aristocracy, which is actually a really good opinion in my opinion, and something that I actually haven't really thought about before, but now that I think more about it, it makes a lot of sense. He's pro-Israel, as most people are. Ramaswamy is one of the few Republicans who actually practices what they preach in free speech. He vows to release the founder of WikiLeaks and is in strong opposition to government censorship. He says he will not reinstate the transgender military ban. Finally, he supports making Election Day a federal holiday. However, he also supports raising the voting age to 25, which is really bad in my opinion. First off, it just silences the youth who now tends to be leftist, which both Democrats and Republicans don't like, because not only are they socially left, but they're also fiscally left, which, you know, is scary to all the capitalists in our government. Honestly, out of all of the Republicans running, I would probably choose Ramaswamy just because he seems like the most level-headed person, I guess. Okay, what I'm saying here is, if I had to choose a Republican, it would definitely be Ramaswamy, but, you know, if I was given other choices, I would not be voting for him. But out of the Republicans, he's probably the best in my opinion. Okay, so that's the three Republicans I wanted to talk about. I hope you enjoyed listening, and I hope you got something out of this. Thank you for watching.